All right, I'll admit it. I got a little ahead of myself. I mean, like most writers, when we finish a script, we get really excited and we want to send it out. And sometimes that's not the best thing to do. Because here's the truth. If you submit your script before it's really ready, you may be killing your chances before you even get started. So I thought today's video would be important to talk about why revisions matter, how to polish your first 10 pages, and what kind of steps you can take to really hook your reader. Every writer knows that a great script isn't just written, it's rewritten and revisions. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard this. I've heard it countless times, and I really do believe in it, that your first draft is shit. But then you got to sift through and find out what works within that draft. And so a great writer knows how to revise. And you've got to remember that, you may go through countless revisions. I know the most current script, and I still feel like I can refine it and kind of polish it and find kind of more depth within some of the characters, but it was about 7 drafts. I know I did one not too long ago, a couple years ago, that was 3 drafts, and I still know it's got, potential, but there's still more revisions. And that's just what every writer knows, is that a draft, as important as it is to get out, probably have heard me say on this channel, progress, not perfection, but writing and revising is really important. Getting that feedback, taking it from there. And just to know this, that your first impression, and this is why I think revisions are really important, your first impression, whether that's an agent, a manager, a competition, matters. So you got to make that count. So here's a few takeaways that you should think about when revising. You will always need multiple drafts, so don't rush the process. It's just something that the more you read or write a draft and read it, you're going to kind of find the depth within your characters, the theme, the plot, all those important things. The first draft, as I mentioned, is for getting ideas out, okay? Not for sending out. And a near perfect draft is what gets you in the door. So this is why revising, sending it off not to family or friends, but people within the industry that are experienced readers, people that can give you good notes, can give you good feedback. So once you've written a draft, let it sit, walk away, spend a week, a month, maybe a year or two. I don't know. It depends on if you have another idea, go back to writing it. But yeah, it really does take you some time and distance to really process and think about what you've written, and also to kind of erase or disconnect that attachment that you might have with that draft. There's certain times that, anyone that's done anything creative, you become attached to that piece. And so you're stuck, or at least maybe that connection of what was going on in your mind to paper becomes concrete. And so it's a lot harder to delete, to change, to remold, to reshape, anything like that. So walking away, coming back fresh allows you to kind of revise, I think, with a clearer conscience. The next step is getting feedback from the right people. A common mistake, as I was mentioning above, that a lot of people do is you send it to family or friends. And these people typically are really looking out for your best interest. So they're going to be very encouraging. They're going to be very supportive. They're going to tell you, great job, this looks great, I love the story. But they're most likely not knowing where the depth or what to kind of, in terms of feedback, what to give you. So this is why it's important to find, readers. And I mean, readers are great, whether they're other writers, getting other filmmakers, people from screenwriting groups. You can get paid, script coverage. I wouldn't do that early in the process, but probably after you've done a few revisions. You can get places like the Blacklist, and there's so many others out there that you can kind of pay for a service and get the coverage and feedback. But again, wait until you've got a few revisions. And then fellow screenwriters in the industry. I think there's a lot of networking groups out there. And this isn't just one to go find people and say, hey, read my script, but it's building a relationship. And then when you get to the point, say, hey, I have a script, would really love feedback, because it takes a while. If anyone that's written a script, it's not like an easy, just like a movie. You sometimes you got to put a little more time and effort into thinking, especially giving feedback. You might have to slowly take notes as you're reading. So that's kind of the next, big mistake, is just sending it off to people that really aren't experienced enough to give you that feedback. This next step, and I kind of enjoy it, but it is a challenge, is taking that feedback and knowing how to apply it. Um, I will say the most current script, which is a year ago now, about the producer I was working with, I thought we had a really good collaboration. It was really, both of us kind of understood the story. The feedback that was given between the two of us, we kind of knew what was shaping the story. She'd sometimes give feedback. Sometimes if I felt like it was going to push the story in a wrong direction, we'd talk about it. But this is where kind of managers, again, look for, is that collaboration. Are you willing to, to accept feedback and kind of go with that? Sometimes you're going to say, yeah, that's great feedback. Other times it might just be an opinion. So it's just kind of thinking about what's the real problem with the story and how do I fix it. Again, if you're getting one, because sometimes I don't want to say bias, but you might have someone that gives a feedback and you're kind of like, okay, thanks for that, input, but it's not really what the story needs. But if you're hearing common mistakes or kind of common issues or kind of repeating things from other, multiple readers, then you might go, okay, that's definitely a glaring issue that I need to kind of correct. And the last thing is polishing your first 10 pages. Most managers, agents, competitions, they've talked about how critical the first 10 pages are, and even more people are saying the first page. So you've got to think about what you're doing, really not just action. Yes, you need to deliver information, but is it all exposition? Is it all people talking? How do I kind of show versus telling? Is it compelling? Is it engaging? Is it hooking your reader? Especially at the end of pages, I've heard this, and this is something I look for within the first few pages, and I try to do it periodically throughout the script, is that, some scenes will be longer, but how am I hooking someone at the end, whether it's presenting a question, curiosity, but makes them want to read on. So you've got to think about, what am I doing to, again, keep that reader reading. And I think this is another thing, is not being too on the nose. I will say, and I tell my students this all the time, my first draft is quite often on the nose because I'm still trying to say what's in my head. So I put it down on paper, walk away, come back, revise, and say, I know what I'm trying to say here, so let's clean it up, add the subtext, add, character in there, the dynamic, that how that character might speak. What are they really trying to say, but what are they withholding? Again, information, but its most important thing is to polish those first 10 pages. Really, really think about, how do I push and make these first 10 pages phenomenal. Now, I've said this before, I kind of live by it. It's the progress, not perfection. And I do think it's still important. So maybe you're not at that stage yet, and this is a good reflection point, that you really do want to send your script out, but you're not ready. So think about progress, not perfection. Revisions are essential, and it's kind of achieving the possible. Writing a script itself is tough. Revising it, even more challenging sometimes. And revising it and revising it and revising it, and over each revision, maybe you just focus on one little thing, right? That's that progress. So instead of trying to make all the changes in one revision, maybe you're saying, hey, I'm going to focus on the protagonist and really look at their growth, their kind of story arc, and think about what their want is at the beginning, and along the line what their need is, and do they achieve both, and how are they growing, and how am I showing this within the story and conflict. If there's conflict missing, maybe the next draft you say, hey, there's some conflict that we go 20 pages and there's no real conflict, no real change, no real story progression of characters challenging the protagonist or each other. Maybe you add a little bit. Again, this comes from those three levels, right? The internal challenge or conflict, the interpersonal, right, with relationships, and external. And I tell my students, if you're struggling with that, give your character external, because a lot of times that external or interpersonal will create more of that internal conflict and dynamic. So it's good to think about that. But, every writer's different and has their process. So you've got to learn your process. And the more you do, The more you write, progress, and then revise, the better you're going to get. Now, everyone's journey is different, and I'd really love to know where you all are in your screenwriting journey. Are you on your first draft? Are you still outlining? Are you on your fifth draft? Have you written 15 drafts? How has it changed? Kind of where you've progressed. Would really love for feedback. Maybe we can kind of share scripts, and maybe even we do something if people are interested. Maybe I try to do a video where I take some of the submissions if people have their first 10 pages where I read it and give feedback. I don't know. That could be cool. See if we get comments and interest in that. But in the end, again, hopefully you learned something from this video, how important revisions are. I know I was really wanting to send out to managers, which is still my goal this year. And I have drafted some query letters, but I kept thinking and maybe this is the perfectionist in me, was reading through that draft, and I was like, I could still revise a little more. So that's kind of where I was like, I got ahead of myself. So going back a little bit, and this isn't that I'm not making that step forward. I still think I'm progressing, but this is kind of that importance of revision. So as everyone, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned a little bit. Please subscribe to our channel, share, leave comments. Love to hear what you all love to learn a little bit more, and keep on writing.